All right, let's jump right in. We're tackling a giant of 20th century literature today, T.S. Eliot's 1922 masterpiece, The Waste Land. Now, this poem is a huge deal, one of the most important, most influential works ever. But, let's be real, it's also famous for being incredibly difficult. The poem kicks off with probably its most famous line, and right out of the gate, it just completely messes with your head. April is the cruelest month. I mean, wait a second. Isn't April supposed to be about, flowers, rebirth, all that good stuff? But nope. For Eliot, it's cruel because it's forcing a world that's gone numb to wake up and feel again. And that hurts. It sets this incredibly uneasy tone for everything that follows. And believe me, that feeling of unease, it only gets more intense. You see, The Waste Land isn't a poem you can just read from start to finish like a normal story. Not at all. It's more like a collage, or maybe a mosaic of broken pieces. You've got all these different voices, random snippets of other languages, shout-outs to ancient myths. It's all just thrown together. It honestly feels kind of broken, like you're spinning a radio dial and catching just a second or two of a dozen different broadcasts. So that really brings us to the big question here, right? The central mystery we're trying to solve. Why? Why is the most celebrated poem of its time so shattered? What could possibly have happened to the world that was so completely devastating that the only way to write about it was in fragments? What broke the world so badly that it broke the art too? Now, the go-to answer, and it's a really good one, is World War I. You just can't overstate the trauma of the Great War. It was this unprecedented catastrophe, and you can feel its shadow looming over pretty much every single line of this poem. Think about it. The war's impact was just immense. It wasn't just about the millions of lives lost, a whole generation gone. It completely shattered this cozy 19th century belief in progress and reason. Suddenly, everything seemed pointless. Eliot himself called it an immense panorama of futility and anarchy. And you see it right there in the poem, like when the speaker sees a ghost of a soldier, but he's from the Punic Wars, thousands of years ago. It's this chilling way of saying the horror of World War I is just the latest chapter in a very, very long book of human conflict. Okay, but what if that's not the whole story? What if there's another hidden trauma? See, while the world was still reeling from the war, something else was happening. Something even deadlier. And this forgotten catastrophe? Well, it might just be the real key to understanding the wasteland. Just look at these numbers. They're absolutely staggering. World War I, horrific, right? Around 20 million dead. But the 1918 Spanish flu, we're talking 50 to 100 million people. Let that sink in. It was a global trauma that literally dwarfed the war, and yet so often we just forget about it when we talk about this era. So what happens if we put on a new pair of glasses and look at this poem again? What if it's not just a war poem? What if it's a plague poem? We know that T.S. Eliot himself got the Spanish flu. His wife did too. Suddenly, the poem's exhaustion, its feverish delirium, the way its logic just jumps all over the place. Maybe those aren't just metaphors for a broken civilization. Maybe they're the literal symptoms of a pandemic.
We actually have a name for this now, right? We call it brain fog or post-viral fatigue. Back in Eliot's day, they called it neurasthenia. It's that awful feeling of mental confusion, total exhaustion that you get after a really bad fever. And when you think about it, the whole structure of The Wasteland feels like a perfect description of that state of mind.
I mean, just listen to this bit from a game of chess. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak, what are you thinking of? This isn't just some couple having a fight. This is the sound of nerves that are completely frayed. This is what it sounds like when people are trapped together, maybe in quarantine, going stir-crazy. That frantic, repetitive, almost delirious vibe, it's the perfect sound of a feverish, anxious mind where communication has just completely broken down.
And the physical sickness is everywhere in the poem once you start looking for it. Take this image of the crowd on London Bridge. The line says, "Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled." Now think about that through the lens of a respiratory pandemic. It's suddenly not a metaphor anymore, is it? It's this chilling, literal picture of a city full of people with damaged lungs, a whole population struggling just to breathe.
Or how about this one? It's pretty grotesque. A dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit. Yikes. That's not just some abstract symbol of things falling apart. No, this is visceral. It's the kind of gritty, awful detail you'd get from a sickbed. It's the physical misery of a patient with a raging fever, dehydrated, their mouth dry and foul.
This is where it gets really fascinating, because this idea completely flips our understanding of the poem's most important symbol, water. The whole poem is about this dry, sterile land that's desperate for rain, right? It needs water for salvation. But then you get this terrifying line, fear death by water. Why? What's that about? Well, think about it. If you have pneumonia, which was the big killer in the Spanish flu, your lungs fill up with fluid. You're literally drowning from the inside. For a flu victim, water isn't salvation. It's the enemy. So you have this unimaginable horror from both the war and the plague on a scale that nobody had ever seen before. And when you're faced with that, what do? How do you even talk about it? Your normal, everyday language just fails. It's not up to the task. So to even begin to express this horror, Eliot had to invent a whole new way of writing. He had to create a code.
He had a name for it, actually, the mythic method. And it kind of worked like this. Step 1, admit that modern language is broken. It just can't handle the reality of the situation. Step 2, reach back into the past. Use allusions to ancient myths, to classic literature as a kind of shorthand to talk about timeless human experiences. Step 3, use those old myths, like the story of the Holy Grail, to give some kind of structure to all the modern chaos. And finally, step 4, when your own traditions fail, look elsewhere for answers, in this case, to ancient Sanskrit texts. Okay, want to see this code in action? Let's take that famous line from the pub scene, "Hurry up, please, it's time." Now, on the surface, that's just a barman yelling that the pub is closing, right? No big deal. But if you're reading this as a plague poem, that line becomes absolutely chilling. It's not the barman's voice anymore, it's the voice of death. In a pandemic where life could be snatched away in an instant, there was no time for long goodbyes, no time for proper mourning. It was just, hurry up, please, it's time. Your time is up, suddenly. And this lens changes how you see the unreal city, too. The city isn't just sad or depressing. It feels unreal because the pandemic literally destroyed the social fabric. All the little rituals that make a city feel alive, that bind us together, they were all gone, replaced by fear, isolation, quarantine. So people are just these shuffling ghosts, avoiding eye contact, avoiding each other. The whole culture, the memory of how to live together, it's just been erased. So when you put it all together, the whole poem starts to feel like this coded cry for help. It's Eliot trying to diagnose the sickness of his time, this deep spiritual decay and cultural amnesia, and the only tools he has left are the stories and languages of the past. But here's the crucial thing. The poem doesn't just leave us in all that despair. It's not a completely hopeless poem. After all the fever and the delirium, the final section feels different. The tone shifts. We move out of that sick city and into this desolate landscape. And there's this desperate search for a way out, a path toward healing. And then it happens. The fever finally breaks. You hear the sound of thunder in the distance. And this thunder doesn't just promise rain. It speaks. And what's amazing is that it speaks in Sanskrit. It's this powerful signal that the answers, the healing, they're not going to come from the same Western traditions that have just failed so spectacularly.
So, what does the thunder say? It gives us this 3-part instruction manual for how to rebuild a broken world. Datta, which means to give, Deyadvam, to sympathize, and Damyata, to control. Give, sympathize, control. It's such a simple but incredibly profound prescription for how a civilization, or even just a person, can begin to heal.
The very last line of the poem is Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It's a Sanskrit word that Eliot translates as the peace which passeth understanding. And that, I think, leaves us with a pretty powerful question, one that feels especially real for us today. After everything we've been through in our own time, what does it really mean for us to give, to sympathize, and to control so that we can find that kind of deep, healing peace in our own wasteland?